Thank you very much for that introduction. Can everybody hear me by a show of thumbs up, preferably? Thank you very much, Cynthia Corazon. Thank you for acknowledgement, Barbara. Hello, how are you? Welcome in, Violet and Patel. Yeah, and I see you all. You guys are here. Okay, thank you very much. As it was mentioned earlier, today we'll be delving into the topic of conflict de-escalation and difficult conversations at work. Our main the slogan for today is how do we stay calm, communicate clearly, and lead with confidence in those troubling situations. In the past, we've handled different similar topics when it comes to issues of customer relations or customer experiences, or even handling difficult customer experiences and the like. And you'll find that we've also in the past dealt in topics of emotional intelligence, where we saw it's more about how you react to a situation that either will escalate the situation or de-escalate the situation. So bearing that in mind, I want to move forward um, to what we will be learning today. So what will you learn today in this? So by the end of this session, you will be able to, number one, to identify signs of escalating conflict within the workplace setting or generally other areas. Apply evidence-based de-escalation techniques. So it will be more of a practical type of training where we can see how do we de-escalate and how can we adapt those skills in terms of when we want to de-escalate those situations. We'll be able to use proven frameworks for those difficult conversations that will adapt, and we'll see this later on in the conversation, the frameworks I will propose. You'll be able to respond effectively to anger, defensiveness, or withdrawal. So we'll see how do we manage our responses regardless of the situations we are facing. And then you'll be able to transform. The aim is to be able to transform conflict situations into collaboration. That is to be able to turn a negative into a positive. Yeah. So kindly note that the session, as mentioned earlier, will be very interactive. There will be questions that I can ask that you can engage in. If you have questions yourself, please feel free to ask. Yeah. So we move onwards to see why are we trying to learn on this? What is the significance? Why does conflict management matter? Yeah, for that, for lack of a better word, does it even do we need to even know how to manage conflict? That's one reason. And with this, I'll move on to the statistics. Yeah, just general statistics that are out there when it comes to a survey that was conducted at a workplace. They found that 81% said because of conflict, it had a negative impact on their performance. For this group of employees, 75% noted that it wasted a lot of time. So time management becomes an issue. You find yourself either you're trying to to resolve or win a debate as opposed to move forward towards the goal. And 44% noted that conflict can cost money. Time is money. So that is self-explanatory. And sometimes in the tail end, it might mean that conflict might have an impact or might have an impact of you or an organization losing a client. I don't know whether that makes sense. If anybody else has something to add on, please feel free. You can either comment to that. But if you've had a scenario where you've seen the negative impact of conflict, at the end of this slide, I can come back to you. You can put your hand up and then you can tell us an experience. So a Gallup study found teams with poor conflict management have 50% lower productivity. That's 50%. You wouldn't think if for instance, if at 50% you're still operating at a profit and you're in conflict. So think in terms of to just double your profit. That will mean just resolving or managing your conflict better. Not even an aspect of adding more to your sales team or the like. Just managing your conflict better might increase your sales or your performance or your profits by 100% in terms of productivity. If you're looking at it in the literal sense. Yeah. Mm. So, what are the impacts of conflicts as noted by them? There was an aspect of productivity, as we saw even earlier, in terms of negative performance. It will curb on innovation. And I don't know whether you have any situations in the workplace where, because of the conflict situation, you're afraid of negative feedback, or you're afraid of what they call stray bullets coming your way. So, whatever innovative idea you might have during a meeting, you find yourself keeping to yourself. Yeah, Patel, you found yourself in such a situation before. So, you see, these are the things that we never think about, but they can happen, especially in a plenary session. Yeah, where we are meeting as a whole department or as a whole organization. Psychological safety. Yeah, mental health is very important. But if you're in an environment where even coughing might resound to feedback or you being cited and your wrongs being pointed out by either a manager or a boss or somebody or even a line manager or even a direct supervisor, you can find that whenever you're entering such an environment or whenever you're called to a meeting, um, either you're already wary of what will be discussed. So those feelings of jitteriness, those feelings of anxiety are not very well and are not very good for mental health. Aspects of retention due to conflicts, there can be instances where you don't retain your staff. If you find that a lot of staff are leaving, that could be a sign that every other time if you find yourself recruiting for a certain post, it might mean you need to look at how do you manage conflict within that. Yeah. Is it punitive measures when somebody has a different idea? Or do you embrace? Or when people are at loggerheads with each other, how do you help them that without humiliating either party? Mm. And there can be the aspect of trust can be lost. And trust is lost basically out of the results of how the conflict situation was resolved. You find that if somebody humiliated you in session or quote unquote your secrets were shared, it is during that heated moment, it becomes very very hard for you to trust anybody or be open with anyone within the workplace. And without trust, then the productivity will wane. Psychological safety is straight out of the window. There will be no contributions, therefore no innovations coming in, and people will start coming to work just to look for work outside of the organization. So they use company time and resources to try and look for work outside. So that in health affects productivity. Are we together to that point? Anybody who has had any situation similar to this when it comes to conflict, you can share. Even in the messages. Anybody? Okay, by a thumbs up, are we still together? Yeah, I see no thumbs are coming up. Okay, Winslet, Sylvia, Corazon. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Okay, thank you for the feedback. Feel free to add any situations. This list is in no way exhaustive. So let me move onwards. The next slide. Now we've seen, okay, why it matters to manage our conflict. Because at the end of the day, we are there in an organization with a goal and we want to achieve that goal. So now, okay, what do we really consider conflict to be? And this moves me on to my next slide. In this next slide, you're seeing, I'll put that icon over there of the two parties. When we talk about conflict, this might be what we see in terms of the image that comes out. Yeah. So you see there are two parties and they're at war, and there's somebody in between when it comes to conflict management, just separating the two parties. This is what we also think conflict management is. It's just making sure people don't fight, not resolving, but telling them, you go to your corner, you go to your corner, please don't come. Yeah. That is how we view conflict management. However, conflict management is not about separating warring parties or rather opposing parties, but it's about bringing both views together and coming up with one view. I remember in philosophy, they used to have this aspect of there is the thesis, there is antithesis, and then they both bring about the synthesis. If I'm not wrong, I could be wrong, and I start to be corrected. Or was it thesis and antithesis brings the synthesis? Either way, two unlike scenarios will come out with a bigger, better scenario. That's usually the thought around that process. So it's not about separating those scenarios because at one time you need them to come and work together. So that is what we picture conflict to be. However, what conflict really is, and yeah, it is a perception that something important is threatened. Yeah, yeah, that's what brings about the conflict between these parties. It's like my view is different from yours, and this is what I feel will work best in this situation. And the fact that you're not embracing my view is the issue that is now making me feel that you don't understand where I'm coming from, you don't understand what I'm saying, and that is why I'm in conflict with you. And with you, you have the same internal thought process happening. So both parties, I can call this red and blue, have the same internal process, but the only thing is that the views are different. The process is the same. You are not understanding my thinking. This is what will work. How come you don't want to hear me out? Um, if you hear me out, then you'll understand that I'm right. Something to that effect. And now, the white or the gray in the middle has to come and seek a middle ground, not to separate them necessarily. Yeah. And I don't know whether you've had such scenarios in your organization where you thought it was somebody who was against you, only to find out that later on this person just had a different view process and they didn't express it earlier. Has anyone ever experienced that, or we are still in conflict with our colleagues that we are holding different views? Yeah, still in conflict. Yeah? Julius, you're still in, or you've never had any conflict situation, or any conflicting views. Mhm. Okay. Oh yeah, I see no thumbs up, no thumbs down. So silence, does silence mean we've never had situations like those, or does it mean we have had? Mm, okay. So since it's an issue of perception, I'll go down to see what are the common triggers that happen within that. Yeah. So it's an issue of perception. I'm perceiving somebody is holding a different view from what I'm holding. So what are the common triggers in terms of that? And one of them is the aspect of we lose the loss of control. By that it means that after the perception in terms of this view is different than mine, and I blow. It's like a high pressure situation, and the lead is blown off. Therefore, I become very reactive and out of control, and my voice becomes louder and something of that sort. So that means if I'm doing that, the other party will feel somehow they need to come into the defensive. And even for them, they'll blow up in a similar manner. And that in itself will be now the trigger that comes in to now what we call a conflict situation. Yeah. So basically, the conflict is now coming because both parties feel like all of them. One feels like this other party has lost control, and therefore, even for them, they're responding in equal measure. Yeah, so that is one of the trigger. Another trigger could be an issue of expectations. Yeah, you have unmet expectations. You're expecting so and so to do one, two, three things. They only did one, three, four, five, the two, three, they left to you. Yet you are supposed to proceed with the fourth. So you go back and you say, okay, and when you're asked about where the job has or whether the project is reached, you're like, I'm still waiting for party A to complete two and three. So party A is now asked, okay, you are delaying the project. How comes you're delaying and you are keeping party B in waiting? So party A says, I didn't know. I mean, I already did my part. I don't understand why party B is throwing these other bits to me or these other tasks to me. So in that way, now all of a sudden you have a scenario where, okay, we expected this from you. This is what is happening. So now we are now at conflict that so and so is a backstabber. So and so is, you cannot agree with them on anything. They do not deliver on promises and vice versa. So and so has high expectations, yet they should be realistic. So it becomes a whole conflict situation. Yeah. If I'm not making, am I making sense by a thumbs up? Are these any scenarios? Are they, um, can you relate with them? Yes, Patel, thank you. Doreen, thank you very much, Winslet. Yeah. So those are certain scenarios we don't think about, but they come in. Uh-huh. Thank you, Lillian, as well. The aspect of feeling disrespected. Yeah. This is where you feel like somebody is belittling you, as they call it, madara. You enter a room, you are speaking, and nobody is even paying attention to what you are saying. You're asking a question, nobody responds to you. Yeah. And Jenga, this you can really relate to. Aspect of feeling disrespected. I laugh now, but it's not a very nice feeling. Sorry. Because sometimes, like I said, it could be a perception issue. You feel disrespected, but maybe even it's an aspect of people didn't know who was to respond to a question you raised. And this always happens when you have a WhatsApp group and maybe this a head or somebody out in the field asks a questions. Can you send me the pricing for so and so if it's a sales team for this product? Or what are the specifications for this product? A general question is sent on the WhatsApp group. Nobody responds. So they feel like, hey, when I ask questions, it's not responded to. But when so and so asks questions, we respond to so and so. And it could be the person who's asking the question now is the one who's always responding to other people's question. So everybody assumes it is so and so's role it is his or her role to respond to the question. So when someone is now asking, you find that things have changed. So at that point, of course, when this particular person comes back to the office, they'll feel like they're alone, they're disrespected, nobody pays attention, you're blue ticking, and you blue tick my messages, and this could be even exhibited during a meeting where they'll be like, no, 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 no. Apparently, some people are more important than others when it comes to that. So, yes, another one could be lack of fairness. Yeah. In terms of are we exercising equity in all our decision making, or do we know of situations where um, some are considered to be more genuine than others? Yeah, because those situations do arise every once in a while, where you find you go out, you do one mistake, and you'll hear of it constantly in every meeting and the like. Somebody else does that mistake, and maybe the supervisor says, "But we have to understand so and so is human, so we allow." Same mistake, just different parties. The actors are the only different things. But you feel that one is getting privileged treatment, and for you, we quote unquote, if you have in an office, there are people who say they are the stepchildren of the CEO or the stepchildren of the manager. Uh, and so is the darling of the manager. These are the darlings, as we are the CEO. And funnily enough, such situations of fairness don't only happen in the work situation. I found in voluntary organizations, if you ever belong to a choir, is where you notice how fairness is perceived. as being different depending on the voice that you are singing. Sometimes you find sopranos in most choirs. I found that sopranos are more favored, or altos feel sopranos are more favored, and particular sopranos, even within themselves, I feel so and so is more favored by the choir master or the leader of the choir. The men usually, I don't know. From my experience, men really don't pay much attention to that. I think you've been part of that. You can relate. Men usually are usually nonchalant about it. But that is the thing. When it comes to lack of fairness, then that will mean if I perceive myself being treated unfairly, then in that way, I'll be more in conflict with the people who are being treated quote unquote nicely. So I'll be very acrimonious towards them, waiting and hoping for their faith, hoping, and that is not my main goal when I come into the organization. We are all human, and these things do happen. Yeah. Uh, there's the issue of identity or collision. And this could happen in various ways, especially when it comes to aspects of values. That in my value system, this is what I hold as true. This is what I hold as dear. And then you come and you start saying no. And sometimes it's even outside of work. I remember I used to work for a non-profit. And part and parcel of that will be when you are seeking funding. So we will have the non-profit was supposed to be non-religious, non-faith-based, and the like. And there were liberals and then there were conservatives within the same meeting. So the challenge was the heads were liberals, but the people working for the heads were conservatives. So this donor comes in willing and to fund the project, but it's like we can the conservatives are like, can we start with a word of prayer? And the heads were very adamant. We are a non-religious, non-faith-based organization, so we cannot do that. And the donor now was there and was saying, okay, as I want to be, as I don't want to have anything to do with religion. I'm a non-Christian. I do not believe in the existence of God, and so and so. So even the donor money now makes the conservatives start thinking: do we hold our principles true in terms of the church, or do we follow the needs of this partner who seems to be more in line with what our CEOs or the project managers were doing? So in that situation, you find that there was a conflict. Well after the meeting, the idea was we want to help the vulnerable, but the source of funds tells us they don't believe in God. The conservatives kept on asking, why is this the case? And the liberals were like, that is okay, it's your prerogative. Can we focus on the funding? So sometimes we find some of those identity or value collisions do affect us. And they might be subtle, they might look subtle, but they're very key. Julius has given us a feedback here. Let me just read it out. Feedback and open communication are core parts of our culture, whether the feedback is positive or negative. New colleagues may sometimes struggle to view it objectively or may feel they're not performing well enough. With time, most adjust and become more comfortable with their process. However, for some, it takes longer to come to terms with it, and it may continue for a while. Very true. Especially sometimes I always say, because I don't know the temperament of a new employee, let me refrain from giving, as I said, off the cuff feedback. Like I remember I used to work for an organization where the founder will be give it to them straight. It's all well and good when you're giving it to other people, but when she was given one time, some of our funding partners came and gave it to her the so-called straight. She was in tears, and you see, it's those situations where you realize that when you are new, especially, it can be very intimidating when somebody comes in, because that's the first impression you'll have, that so and so is very is not helpful. They treated me very bad when I was new, or has is very proud. So those are things that come out. So we'll see how we can tackle those going forward. Thank you very much, Julius. Hans, can we have a round of applause for Julius for that excellent contribution? Let's not be mean with our likes and applauses. Very good, Paul and Corazon. We appreciate the same. Same as Winflet. Yeah. So now I move on to the next. Before I move on to the next slide, I like to give an example of some of the situation, like I think a common situation that can happen, and you can tell me. Feel free if you are free to talk, you can just raise your hand, and we will be able to you can unmute yourself and talk, and just tell me. Have you ever have a situation where you find two people talking, or there was a meeting, or even just in life situations, and somebody tells you, you ignored my idea. No, Kevin, I don't like this. I was angry because you ignored my idea during a meeting or even a brainstorming. And for you, you try to explain to them, or somebody else tries to explain to them. I was trying to keep time because I was chairing the meeting. Yeah. Have you ever had such a situation? Anybody? I won't call you to talk. I promise. You can put up by a thumbs up. Has anybody ever had a situation where they're chairing a meeting or they're at a function being chaired and they find that somebody was about to shoot an idea and then it was shot down? Anybody? No one? Never ever. Interesting. So that is only me. Yeah. I was hoping you will relate. I leave that example there. So, by this, I wanted just to show a situation where we're in the same situation, but we are focusing on different threats. By that I mean, for the person who has the idea, is thinking in terms of I want to contribute to the group, I want to put this forward, and if it works, I also want to have that aspect of okay, let me be acknowledged for the things I help resolve. And the person who's chairing that meeting or the person who was in charge of the meeting, same situation is this was a brainstorming meeting. We needed to make sure that we get a feasible solution going forward, but also it was to take place within a certain time. So that's why I had to cut you off. But you see, in that situation, it will look like I'm dismissing so and so's idea because of time. Same situation, but a different threat. So this ideally is me trying to explain that in a work situation, our perception might not be the reality. But if we share our perception later on, or if we share, this is how I felt, then it gives the other party a point of explanation. And notice it's not a point of defense. The other party will also share what was. And then if there's a third party, then the third party can come and bring you together. Yeah. Okay. So we move on to the next slide. So we've looked at different aspects, yeah, so far. So we've looked at conflict management, the significance of conflict management, that is issues of productivity, issues of innovation, psychological safety, it impacts on retention of staff, and issues of trust can be lost when conflict is not properly managed. Yeah. And then we've looked at what the conflict really is. We've seen it's a perception, how we see things. And the triggers can come from this perception of how we see things can come from loss of control, if people are flaring up, if the expectations that have been unmet, if people are feeling disrespected. Julius even mentioned the aspect of even new employees can be very intimidated. If there's a lack of fairness, if I feel that people are picking up on me, are picking on me, not picking up, picking on me, and if there's an identity or value collision. Now we're at the point of okay, so we have known what conflict is, but how does it escalate to be now that thing that causes now that negative impact on our organization? So the question is, I'll ask first and foremost, is silence the absence of conflict? Yeah, anybody? You can say a yes or no answer? Is silence the absence of conflict? I give it like 30 seconds, and you can feel free to put the response in the. Okay. So Rebecca says silence is the is the absence of conflict, but then she also says that's Cold War. Uh-huh. For Violet, you say it depends. Okay, but it has to be situational. Sharon says no. Silence is not the absence of conflict. Julia says no. Silence is not. Yes, I see. Corazon says silence is also a response. Interesting. That will be Cold War. up there. Barbara mentions sometimes people choose silence for sake of peace. Okay, that's true, especially when it becomes to a point of you feel you're not. No, at times keep silent. Ulimwengu take charge. Huyo umemwachia dunia Washington. Tumewachia Mungu. Asiyefunzwe awali, asiyefunzwe na mama hufunzwa na dunia. Okay, Violet Simu says one way of avoiding conflict is being silent. Okay. Silent is also a method of conflict avoidance. Okay, so I see it's situational. Very rarely is it that it's silence is the absence of conflict, but it could be. But we've also seen there are also context where it's a means of conflict, and we've seen situation where it's a means of trying to avoid further conflict. So that's the escalation curve. Yeah. So by the escalation curve, I want to see how does it come to a point where it's no longer a matter of silence alone. It's now a heated discussion, and then hopefully we go down to de-escalate. So, excuse me. So we look at aspects of discomfort. Yeah. So if I'm comfortable, I feel like meetings have been tense. Like there are those meetings you can sit to, or those sessions you can sit through, or those situations you just enter a room and you just feel, here it's not the day I can start smiling with my happy-go-lucky ways and start greeting everyone. You just feel somebody is typing. There's one time I entered a room and one of our colleagues was typing very, very. I don't know. They call it. There's a term they use for that typing, where somebody types and you can hear those the keyboard going off. Yeah, and it's continuous, and they're just looking at the screen and they're very angry. And at that point, you just know this is angry typing happening. They're still doing work, and the other party you're seeing, the other party does not talk much. You're saying hi to people, and nobody acknowledges your hi. Yeah. So there's that aspect of tense and discomfort feeling, the environment itself. Yeah. So those are the aspects of why we're asking, is silence the aspects of conflict necessarily? What is the environment like? It might not necessarily be that there's no conflict. Yeah. And then we have incidents. So now there's that aspect of, okay, we're feeling uncomfortable. And now an incident happens. Somebody throws an idea during that meeting and it's shut down immediately. Somebody else throws an idea, it's shut down. Now, at that point, especially, you're at a point of discomfort. Now you're talking, and everybody seems to be not willing to listen to what you're saying. So now that comes up to an aspect of, okay, now I'm having incidences where there's abrupt, everybody's short with me. So now we have come to the aspect of discomfort, general feeling of the environment. Now you're experiencing it firsthand, how how everybody's reacting, and you're wondering, where did I go wrong? So now there comes the aspect of tension. Nobody is making eye contact with other parties. You talk on something, nobody wants even to acknowledge your presence. So now you're feeling all tense. You're like, hey, how will I be able to manage this day? And now all of a sudden it comes to, from that tension aspect, it comes to a crisis because nobody was talking to the other party, nobody's working with another. Therefore, we have things are not working, and nothing is being delivered, nothing is coming, nobody's responding to clients. So at that point, we are at everybody is more or less who is to blame. Everybody is looking for somebody to blame at that point in time. So everything shuts down within the organization. So now we're at a crisis level. So I don't know whether we're seeing how a small discomfort a small discomfort has now reached to crisis level where productivity has been impaired. Yeah, are we able to draw that line? Yeah, by a show of thumbs up, or should I repeat it again? Yeah, am I communicating by a thumbs up? So I see no thumbs up, so I gather that people haven't understood the escalation curve. Okay, let me try and put it in a form of a diagram. Okay, so I don't know. Let me use this pointer. Okay. So at this point, am I still audible? By a thumbs up? Okay, thanks, Washington. So at this point, we have latent conflict, yeah? Nothing is happening. Everybody is cold war manenos. We still feel the discomfort, and I'm not mentioning, I'm not asking, I'm not sharing. We're at that point. Then conflict emerges in terms of we have an incident. So an incident occurs where maybe a friend of mine goes to speak to someone and I'm in conflict with someone, and now they're short with them. I also bump up and say, yeah, no, you can't do this to so and so. You did this to me as well. We will not be allowing you to do that on a regular. So what does that entail? So that means it's now at a point of escalation where party A will feel like me being party B and my other friend being party C are against them. So there's now constant tension when we meet. So even factions start flaring up. And I don't know whether in a work situation you've ever had such situations where you find even departments at loggerheads with each other. That this department accounting does not talk maybe to, if it's a non-profit, to programs department, or it could be an issue of sales department and marketing department. Sometimes they're put together, sometimes they're separate. Sales feels marketing is given a bigger budget, yet they're the ones who are bringing in the customers and closing the deals. Or sales with accounting team. Sales feels accounting does not even authorize or impressed in good time, and we are the ones who are bringing in the money. So all of a sudden, everybody is at their perspective because accounting is at a point of accounting is feeling like, we have to be also prudent in our spending. So sales does not understand that. So what happens is now because of that escalation, we are at a stalemate where everybody is hurting, everybody is angry, nobody wants to do what they need to do because they feel the other party is not understanding the situation, but they still hold their ground. So at that point of stalemate now is when now we need to start looking at the escalation techniques and then dispute settlement and then to that, which we'll come to. So far, so good. We are together. Thumbs up. Yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate. Okay, let me move on swiftly. So now we've seen how that escalation curve is going. So now we want to come and see what are the early warning signs. And at this point, I want to share an image. And if anybody can contribute, we're open to. So there's an image I want to share out. Okay. Imagine we are having a discussion and a meeting or a way forward or a and somebody does that to you and looks like or looks away in that, or is that the what they call they roll the eyes. I was trying to look for a clear figure of rolling the eyes at this point, and you are in conflict with each other. Do you think, Corazon, we have resolved the conflict? Imagine now we are at loggerheads, and this is the other party, and it's me talking to this other party. What does that show? Yeah, not really. This is not. So feel free to comment. So this is not really in terms of rolling the eyes, or this is not really in terms of we haven't resolved the conflict. I gather. Yeah. So at this point in time, you can realize this other party has given up on whatever is being discussed here. So this is a classic physical warning sign. Yeah. Corazon, thank you very much. Yeah. Corazon says not resolve the conflict. Washington, ati sasa huyu anasema I'm not in, not again. So it's like, this person keeps on repeating. It's a choir, over and over. So you already know that at this point, nothing is being resolved. So those are some of the warning signs that we're talking about, behavioral signs. So if you come somewhere and you see you're getting constant interruptions, that is already a sign of, okay, this is going to be a conflict situation. And if you're a third party, that is something to do. Violet has said, not solved. Ningoja tu, ningoja tu side. Okay, your comments. So, if you find somebody who has a sharp tone, yeah, they're sharp with you very fast. And I relate this when I was going to apply for my ID. I was just straight out of high school, and I thought Everybody will always support me now that I'm going to be a. And we went there, and I've never seen such. As in, I entered the room, I was told, "Hey, step out, go back out there. How comes you're entering a government office without knocking?" It was very sharp, and then I understood. Okay, this is going to be a conflict situation. How can I start with that? So if somebody is sharp with you, a sharp tone, you already know there must be an issue behind it. Yeah, eye rolling. Uh, I tried to look for this stock image because of the eyes. I presume that is, if it was a video, they'll be like rolling somehow. But that's one of the side eye, as they say. Eh, so those are one of the classic signs of early warnings of, okay, this person is dismissing what you're saying. Sign. Yeah, those are of yeah, it sounds like somebody is just tired of trying to explain to you a situation or trying to explain to you what needs to be done. So at that point, they're just given up and they're tired. Basically, they're very tired. And there's those short replies of, especially in our WhatsApp group, when you try to explain something and another person is insistent, somebody just says fine or K. Instead of even okay, somebody just says K or whatever. These I usually see with my niece who's a J. So sometimes who's very young. So sometimes you find that those short replies are already telling you it's a conflict situation. Nothing is being, so you can those are the behavioral signs you can look at. And then there's also the aspect of physical signs that we can look at: a flushed face, a rigid posture, and sometimes rigid posture with, when we were younger, there used to be that neck thing that the ladies will do when they don't like whatever you're saying, and it will be very interesting. And nowadays I see there is that aspect of, it's like it's almost a battle. There's the aspect of fast paced breathing, yeah, and things like that. So when you come to that situation, sorry, let me go back to that slide. When it comes to those situations, you can see we already have an aspect of seeing what those will be. And I see also here, you're explaining even the attitude from that figure, the lady who's, that image of the lady there. And Winslet also puts it out that it gives the, can you just finish? I need to go and work attitude. That's very exact. So those are already conflict situations that people have moved through. And you're already pointing them out as it's supposed to be. So once you find that situation, then you need to respond. So as a person, or as a person in charge, you can't also react in the same way. We are now going towards the de-escalation bit. So we've seen what conflict is, we've seen the significance of what conflict does, we've seen the trigger warnings of conflict, and we've seen, now we are seeing even the signs itself, in terms of now we are in conflict with somebody. So do you escalate or do you de-escalate? So how do you go about it? So the number one rule, as always, is regulate yourself first. How you respond is the most critical thing. So by that you mean you cannot de-escalate if you're escalating. Yeah. So by regulating yourself, that means you use what? You pause, slow inhale, maybe 4 seconds, and then you try coming back and grounding phase. And now you see, I can respond, not react. You put it in mentally, you tell it to yourself. And then after that, when you pause, small inhale, slow inhale, now you can give out a response. And then I know sometimes it's very difficult because the first instinct is to react. But this has also helped. So this comes back to our emotional intelligence training. If you can be able to remember those aspects of emotional intelligence, comes from how you react to situations, not the situations that come to you. And so how you respond is very key. So your response is, take time, inhale 4 seconds, and then try and think about and really say, let me respond to this and say this and that and that. Yeah. And then an example or a phrase to use is, let me give an example. As a small inhale, I don't need to win this moment. I need to understand it. Think in terms of understand the moment, not just win. Understand where this person is coming from. Let me not respond immediately. Yeah. So we are together. By a show of hands. Thumbs up. Are we still together there? Okay, thank you very much. So don't win, understand. The aim for us will be don't win, we understand for now. Okay? All right. So we have already seen that is rule number one. So the other techniques we can try and use is the core skills in de-escalation. So the rule number one is to control in terms of to regulate your reaction. So now let's see what other skill can we adopt when it comes to these aspects of conflict resolution, de-escalation. So one would be acknowledge emotion. How you feel, you should realize, you should acknowledge. The first instinct is that I'm angry, but I cannot react in anger. So once you know that you're angry and you cannot react, yeah, yeah, you move back and say, okay, what is the other person feeling? Are they feeling slight? Are they feeling like they're disrespected? Are they feeling angry because of expectations weren't met? You now start putting yourself now empathizing and putting yourself in the other person's shoes based on the situation. So, secondly, think in terms of how do I make them feel heard. So, based on that, you move from the aspect of this is the emotions I'm having, this is the emotion the other person having, but now I need to hear them. I need to listen, employ those listening skills. Yeah, hear them out and show them I'm understanding. Now the empathy comes in at that point. And then try to slow down the pace. And that could be from your mannerisms in terms of how you approach, even your facial structure in itself. If your face comes a bit more relaxed, not very hard, not even frowning, and you're a bit relaxed and you can show the aspect of empathy, and then even the tone of voice you use and how you speak to them, that can now bring them down. Yeah. So I usually like to give examples of situations such as that. And an example of a phrase you can use is, I hear how frustrated you are, and I want to understand what's going on. Yeah. But I can hear your frustration, but let me just understand what's going on now. So what happened? So that you can start slowly again. Because I can imagine when they're coming to you, or if a staff is complaining of something, if you're in HR, or if it's a conflict situation, everybody is talking over the other. But if you take time and then bring it down a notch, and then now you start with those words of, yeah, but hey, I can imagine the frustration, right? But let me just get where you're coming from. Let me just understand what exactly happened to bring you to this point. And even the tone of voice in itself will change. It will not be very commanding. It will not be very demanding. It will be more of a calming tone of voice. Yeah. Okay. So far we've seen, number one, we have to regulate ourselves when it comes to that. We've seen the aspect of core de-escalation technique where you acknowledge, make them feel heard, and then you slow them down. Now we are moving in another aspect where we can try and I call this AVR. AVR. And AVR will just mean is another technique where mostly the intensity, emotional intensity, has been proven to be reduced by 60 to 80% in terms of in the real reactions. Mm. So, for instance, by AVR, we mean the A stands for acknowledge. So, I can see this situation has been stressful. So, you acknowledge the situation that somebody has been presented with, bringing them to that conflict situation. Yeah. Secondly, you need to validate. Similar to the previous one, hearing people out is very important. Listening to people is very important. Making them be aware that you're listening and hearing them out is very important. So it makes sense. You feel the way given the workload. So if it's a work situation where somebody's under stress and under pressure, so you understand what the situation is first. So validate that situation. Don't dismiss it and just say you signed up for it. Yeah. And then finally, redirect. Mhm. And by redirection, we mean we want to talk about what we can do from that aspect. So let's talk about what we can do from here. So now you are going to the solution oriented phase. So that is the AVR. We are acknowledging that this is the situation and this is how you are feeling. We are validating that it's not you, it's the situations or the circumstances you've been placed in that have brought you here, and you are redirecting and saying, bearing this in mind, let's work on something that can ease this situation for you. So already you're de-escalating that conflict situation. Are we together so far? Any questions? Okay. Sawa sawa. So at that point in time, at this point in time, I would like to ask, or for us to ask ourselves, like, how do you feel if, for instance, you came to, how would you feel if you came to me angry and then I responded in this manner or in this manner? How will you feel to see if I came angry and I acknowledged, I validated, and I redirected us to him? How will you feel? And you can put it in the in the chat box. I keep on saying comment section as if I'm a YouTuber every day. You can put it in the chat box there. Just give me a response on how you will feel if I was to respond to you in this manner. Will you continue to be angry? Or will you continue with me at the redirecting phase? So just let me know in that comment section, and then I'll read out in that chat box, and I'll read out your responses. So if you come to me when you're angry, and I did this, I acknowledge what you have and the stressful situation. I validated the way you are feeling, and I redirected. Or do you feel like we'll still be at the angry? I will be very curious to find out if you think that will work. As they call it, amazing stories are jabba too. Okay. 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 Yes. Eric Mtomi says, I will calm down and feel comfortable. Thank you very much, Eric, for that confirmation. Okay. So Eric has confirmed at least one person. I will be able to to calm the anger of one person. So I've escalated, if not for all, just for one. Okay. So now we've moved on to an aspect of, okay, we've seen that people can get angry. We've seen that we need to regulate ourselves. We've seen the escalation skills. We have seen the VR, that is acknowledge, validate, and redirect. And now we are seeing, okay, what do we need to avoid when it comes to this conflict situation? What should we avoid doing? Yeah, when it comes to this conflict situation. And one of the things to avoid is calm down. I don't know whether it's ever worked that somebody has come to you angry and you told them to calm down, and they did calm down. Because what I realize is, especially depending on level of seniority, imagine telling your CEO to calm down. Depending on level of seniority, it might even escalate further, the point of you being fired. So first and foremost, one of the rules is try and avoid to tell people to calm down when they're angry. Yeah, because they might think you are undermining whatever they're feeling. You are overreacting. That's also another one. Yeah. If you come to me angry and I tell you, hey, you're overreacting, I'm pretty sure at that point in time, things will not will not de-escalate. In fact, if they were at 50, they will go to 100 or 200. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's not a big deal. Hmm? Somebody tells you that, and you are there feeling like, hey, you and you're angry. You are like, nobody's understanding me. I am under pressure here, and somebody tells you it's not a big deal. Hey, relax. Yeah, just be professional. Yeah, that those terms that you don't want to overreact. You're always unprofessional. You are always actually making a mountain out of a molehill. You never think positively. You never think of it. Those terms stick with someone for too long. So if we can, the rule of thumb is avoid, if not at least all of them, and even more that are terms that are similar to those ones. Kindly note, as always, that this list is not exhaustive. It's just a cautionary tale of what we need to avoid. Yeah, yeah. Because I want you to picture yourself being angry at this moment, coming to me, same as we did last time, with your concern, and I start with the following. What will happen after that? In the comment section, in the chat box, let me know as I read the other previous comments. So Washington Waga, from the previous one, from the previous side, where I'd asked, how will you feel if I acknowledged what you're saying, validated, and then I redirected? Yeah. You said you'll feel relief, the tension of carrying the frustrations alone eases because someone is recognizing it. For validation, it will confirm that their feelings are real and reasonable, reducing self-doubt, which is very key. And for calm, you feel there will be acknowledgement, can lower emotional intensity, making it easier to think clearly. Very good. So there's no longer clouded judgment. And furthermore, you say it will build trust. It builds confidence in the relationship, showing that the other person listens and cares. And then finally, you mention aspects, the final 2 points, you mention aspects of empowerment. Feelings hard can motivate someone and engage in solving rather than staying stuck. And it fosters a sense of belonging and share humanity, especially if empathy is expressed. Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's very I think at this point, a round of applause for Washington. Those are very, very well explained, valid points, Afadhali. Yeah. Now, yeah. So imagine if you come to me, feel free to also comment, and I give you those responses of calm down, you are overreacting. It's not a big deal. Just be professional, or you always complain. You're always saying, or you never. And and maybe I'm your supervisor, and you've come to me with that. You can share with me in the comment in the chat box as well. So, an example instead. Yeah. So, for example, instead of saying you are being too emotional, yeah. Um, how can we rephrase this? You can feel free to rephrase in the chat box. But one way I was thinking was, I want to understand what's behind the feeling. Yeah. So if I tell, okay, um, this is how you feel. Okay, why do you feel this way when it comes to how you're working, or has something specifically happened to make you feel this way? Yeah. So that you can now see that you are responding to the situation, not just the person. Yeah. Okay. So psychological safety in tough conversations. It's one thing to think about just reacting and the like, but it's also very key to find out how how does one feel, or in what mental state is one when they come to these tough conversations. In what mental state are they in? So one key aspect that we come to reduce is to reduce defensiveness. By defensiveness, I mean you don't want a conversation to be uh, a battle for justifications of one's actions or the situation that was. By that we mean focus on behavior, not the character. So don't always tell you're always. Just say, this situation that you are presented, it shows that this and this is what has happened. However, these were the repercussions when you did this and that and the other. So can we work towards maybe avoiding to do this in future? But don't just say, you're always the one who's always doing this. You're always the one who's always doing this. Yeah. So psychologically, in terms of that tough conversation, you want to have that psychological safety of you not castigating the person. You condemn the act, and not the actor. Yeah. Add context, not judgment. So you put it in the context in which something has happened. Don't just judge and say generally we found out. No. In this context, this and this was not the correct way to go. Yeah, usually this is how we would have expected things to go. But that said, within this context, this will have worked. But in this one, this was now the opposite. Yeah, separate intention versus impact. Yeah. Mhm. So the results, I might have good intentions, but the results were dire. So if my intentions were bad, but the results were good, still, it's a win, but generally, it's not that the best scenario you'd want to have. You want people, if people have good intentions, but they go a bad way, don't condemn them for that. And then keep dignity intact. Do not humiliate people during those tough conversations. Because at that point, everybody will feel psychologically attacked. And now it comes to the aspect of defensiveness. Okay, for example, instead of telling somebody, and depending on what situation that was, that you are rude, maybe it was during a meeting and you're having a discussion, maybe a way to do will be when you cut off Sarah, it shuts down the discussion. So they can know that whatever they said or how they said it, now it affected the whole meeting through. So if it was brainstorming, you did not achieve your goal. So next time they might know it's not about not being able to speak, but it's how we are speaking it out. Yeah. We are together so far, I trust. So coming communication techniques. Yeah. So at this point, I have a photo over there. It's an image of somebody shouting in. Does that person look calm? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Does that person look calm? You can comment in the chat in the chat box. If you feel that's a calm person, even the face is it showing calmness, then that is fine. But if the answer is a no, you can also let me know. So generally, that face in itself does not show any sign of calmness. Yeah, it does not show even the person you're talking to is trying to de-escalate the situation. So he looks frustrated and annoyed. Very true. Yeah, he looks very angry with the situation that is. Nope, dude, dude is wailing. Okay, that is very true. So we find ourselves at times where the dude, where the person who's wailing there. So for us to avoid being to this point, yeah, sometimes it's good to show what we don't want so that you can come to what we want. Yeah, is maybe learn to speak 20% slower. And by speaking slower, then you do not go in a rant or a rave. It's just an aspect of even if you're concerned, it will be like, I don't like this. But if I say, I don't like the way this happened, that's very different from the aspect of I don't like the way this happened. Already that is it's a stunt of violence and the like. So the other party will be very defensive. So what will that mean? Just lower your volume, soften. That face soft. Hello. If somebody looks like you like that every day when they see you, and maybe that's your significant other, it might be very discomforting. Um, if you're physically there, you can keep palms visible, just to show that you have no ill intent and you're trying to show that you're approachable. Uh-huh. Use brief pauses as you speak. You can pause a bit. I'm concerned because I feel like this situation, what it has come to. So just learn how to use those. Yeah? And then one rule of thumb is you can respond by counting 1, 2, 3 in your mind. Yeah. So that it becomes a bit of an easier situation. Yeah. So definitely we've looked at all those situations. We've looked at these we've looked at what not to say. We've looked at psychological safety. We've looked at the common communication. Now we want to have a blueprint on if you're in the lead on how to lead a difficult situation. And I have two images over there. Yeah. And you can see in the first image, the guy has zoned off. It's like you have tried to explain something severally, and finally you're like, hi, I've given up. Let me just, he's now just thinking in terms of what have I gotten myself into. And in the second one, you can see the party. One, the lady there is bringing two parties and trying to explain the situation between them. So if our meetings are more of the first than the second, the photo on the top than the photo on the bottom, it might mean time to think about how do we go to bring it from this to this. And one could be share a purpose. Tell everyone we are here for this common goal. We are here to resolve this one issue. Then everybody realizes we are all together. It's a team. It's not this department and that department. It's not Kevin versus Swan, so Winslet or Washington or the like. And then describe the facts neutrally. Yeah, that is try as much as you can to avoid assigning blame or showing it's only one person's responsibility, but bring the aspect of it's a common failure, it's a common goal, it's a common win. Yeah, yeah. So that even versus conflicting parties, don't make it sound like one party has more of a stake in the game than the other. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then invite perspectives. That is very key. Let everybody share the idea and what they're thinking about, because everybody needs to be heard. And once their perspective is shared, explore the root cause of whatever situation you are finding that is a conflict. So, so this perspective from this department, they'll explain themselves. It is accounting. Program staff or sales team will explain themselves. So now we'll say, okay, for accounts, do we have a budget or have we exceeded our budget? For the sales team, what's the minimum you can work with in terms of what are the priority issues that you need to do so that you can be able to close deals? And then they work with accountants and say, so for these activities we've agreed this can run. For these ones we'll have to keep until we get more funding. Is that okay? Is that agreeable to both parties? And at that point, we'll have resolved the issue and then agree on the next step, as I've already explained that. So this is now a blueprint that will be shared with you through the slides that you can go about when you want to address those conflict situations. We are together so far by a thumbs up. We are not together? Okay, thank you very much, Patel Winslet. And if it's making sense, please feel free to put a thumbs up. Because if I see no thumbs up, then I'll realize it's not making sense. Okay, sawa. And then finally, always confirm and follow up. It's one thing to assume things are resolved, but just follow up to see where people are at one time or another. Okay, difficult conversations are hard to begin. So I just did a script. This is not even a slide to dwell on too long, but I thought it was good to put there. So one example of a conversation open I crafted was, thanks for taking time to meet with me today. My main objective is to work well together with all my colleagues. I say this because I noticed some tension during yesterday's meeting, and I'd like to just hear you out and how you experienced it. It could be this is the person who disrupted the meeting, but I will not say you are a disruptor. Yeah. I will come and in terms of try and bring that conversation to this extent. So even when they're coming into the conversation trying to defend themselves, they'll realize I'm trying to work on a way forward. So I've shared that there for you to view in terms of that. So what we say is equally as important. So I have another acronym, not FBI, but SBI for this one. So I'm hoping the acronyms will help us in remembering some of the steps to take. Like you can remember AVR, mm, acknowledge, validate, and redirect. So this one is SBI. So this one is just basically it's just used to based on behavior-based feedback. So that is when you're in a conflict situation, uh, look at the situation in itself, not the person, and just say, pin it down to that situation in yesterday's meeting. As you could see even in my previous slide, where I mentioned during yesterday's meeting. So that is one of those things we can look at. Yeah. And then behavior. You interrupted Tom 3 times. As in, you can be very specific to which situation you are talking about. Don't just make it a blanket situation. You are disruptive yesterday. No, just say or you are disruptive in meetings. In yesterday's meeting, you interrupted Tom 3 times, and it had it made it hard for the team to contribute. So basically, that disruption alienated most of the people in terms of their contribution. So I want to understand what's happening with you. So that's also another framework you can use if the conversation starter is proving to be difficult. You look at the situation, behavior, impact, draft down what you will say, and then now you can even call into a meeting and then you can start from there. And I find that this will be a bit of a easier conversation to have. Yeah. So we are together so far at that point. At this point, it's making sense. You can let me know by a thumbs up. Okay. So now this is the one key slide, if nothing else, I wanted to address mostly because of time. I think I'll take some 4 minutes to finish this presentation. So handling strong emotions. And this is just, I can say it's more of a guide. It might not be, it might not work 100%, but it will guide you in terms of how to approach situations. So if they're angry, these are sometimes this is maybe what you can say or what you can use or what you can think about. I can see that this is important to you. Take your time. So that will make them stop going to a rant, and now they'll start and say, so I came here right? Right. And this is what I experienced, right? Right. So you're going in a step by step. So you can be able now to pinpoint at which point the conflict situation began. Yeah. If, for instance, the other party seems to, or one party seems to have shut down, be cognizant of that fact and say, I'm noticing you went quiet. What's coming up for you? Yeah. So let them talk about why they went quiet. Hmm? Yeah. So that is a very, very important part. And if they deflect, if they try to move the story towards another direction, what you can say is what? I like to stay with what happened in yesterday's meeting. So if it's about yesterday's meeting, you're putting it to that situation. So it's not an issue of so and so is always out to get me, so and so never likes me. So I was responding to so and so because even when I talk, so and so interrupts. No, no, no. Just specific. Yesterday, what happened? So you are bringing it to the point of they can see it's a structured kind of conversation that is leading to an end. It's not just a witch hunt. Yeah. And then if they cry, for most men don't know how to handle tears. When a lady cries, we give her everything. But if we cry, the advice has been, it's okay to take a moment. We can pause if needed. Yeah. So that is the thing. And then you can visit it others. I see Rebecca has commented, we thank God for emotional intelligence. Some of us have come from far. Thank you very much for that feedback. Yeah, and let me put my thumbs up for you for that comment. Okay, so with that, then I move on to curiosity questions. These are just other additional tidbits I added to the slides that you can go through later on. And one could be, can you help me understand what's most important here to you here? If it's a conflict situation, if it's an issue of work, is it the workload that's the issue or is it the colleagues you're working with? What feels unresolved? That is, if something is still pending, they can point it out. What will the good outcome look like from your view? Be it a situation that they're in or be it a discussion you're having. So those are tidbits. Just to make sure that the situation is totally de-escalated. Um, if somebody gets too defensive, as always, I've given an example there. I sense there's more behind your reaction. What's the core concern? Yeah. So it's like your tone of voice and what you're saying is, I really want to get to the crux of the issue. So I don't just want it to leave it lingering and pending so that it comes back to bite us later on. For a defensive dialogue, for instance, I'll share two sentences there. Yes, I see you felt excluded, and I want to understand how we can prevent that. And there's this. Yes, I see you felt excluded, but I want to understand how we can prevent that. Which one seems to be more likely to de-escalate the situation, A or B? By a quick answer. You can read it again and let me know. Yeah, we are almost at the last slide. Anybody? Okay. They all seem the same, eh? Okay. So this is the yes and skill. So use yes and instead of yes but. So if you use yes and, it will likely diffuse the situation than yes but. Yeah. So that's how you resolve a situation to that effect. Now, since time is not on our side, I will leave it at that. But I'll just do a quick resetting after the conflict. That first and foremost, once you finish even the whole meeting for the conflict situation, always recap what was resolved, reaffirm, respect, yeah. Always clarify any steps that need to be taken after that and ask what support they need. And always have a conclusion statement to, I appreciate you being open today. I know this wasn't an easy conversation. Always acknowledge the person you are there with. Yeah. So the key takeaways for today, conflict is normal. De-escalation is a skill. Emotions drive the and curiosity and validation will calm people. Yeah. And then structure helps difficult conversations go swiftly, smoothly. So I thank you all for your time. Sorry, I extended. I think we started late, that's why. But I will leave it at that. And in case of any questions, you can always ask. Some I can respond offline through ACCUREX. But I thank you very much for your time. Sorry for having to rush there, and sorry for the late start. I hand it over back to Jen. Is it Jen? Hello? Mm. Yes, yes, yes. So for silence, there's two ways. And you saw there's conflict called Cold War when we say it up there. So it's situational. The best rule of thumb is when unsure, just ask about the situation. And as we've said, and it could be the first approach in terms of the conversation, is like, okay, uh, uh, I noticed we went silent all of a sudden. We used to talk. Is it about a situation, or is there anything behind the silence that we're having right now? Because I've noticed I feel a bit uneasy about it. Just acknowledge this is your perception. And if the other party says, oh yes, yeah, it's because of this and this, I was unable to talk to you because I was still angry because of what you did, then you already have your feedback. Yeah. Rebecca, have I responded, or does it still leave you query? Okay, I see with the thumbs up. So silence can be because depending on the situation, but in certain aspects, it can be just all is well. Maybe somebody is going through the meditation. You always see that meme of a husband is sleeping and the wife is thinking, the husband is deep in thought, and the wife is thinking the husband doesn't love her anymore. And the husband is wondering, by the way, how do they make? I don't know. It could be. He's wondering how they make even bread in terms of why does it rise up because of the east and west. It could be anything he's thinking about other than even the wife. Yes, Patel is giving us feedback there. Well presented and very impactful. Thank you. Thank you also for the feedback, Patel. Appreciated. Let me give a thumbs up for that. Yes. Anybody else with a question? I'm open to it. We have 1 minute. Okay. Questions, I'll hand it back. Accurate. Mhm. Mm. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.